without giving away any details, please enjoy part 1 of 3. Thanks for tuning in to Ramshackle United, where we come for the stories and leave with the feeling that we're not so different after all. Today is shaping up to be our first 2-part episode. There's just so much to hear about from our guest. We'll take a ride on the highway to the danger zone. That was terrible. But anyway, I always thought the words were, I went to the danger zone. And then I realized today when I was preparing for this, I was like, that's not what it is.
It's a highway, man.
Yeah. All right. So it's educational. I've already learned something from
There you
today.
go.
So, all right. So today we have a local creative monster of a musician who gets some help from his extra arms when needed. Ramshackle welcomes Ryan Allen.
What's up?
Welcome. All right. We'll just kind of start off from the beginning. Your musical journey. Per your bio, that song "Danger Zone" may have been that initial spark to get you interested in music. So, please expand on that.
Right on. Yeah. So I was born in 1979, which I think is important for the context of the conversation, only because by the time "Danger Zone" by the one and only Kenny Loggins was released, I don't know when that was, probably like 1986, I want to guess. It was when
Top Gun came out.
Top Gun came out, and so that movie was prominently featured in Top Gun, which as a 6-7-year-old kid, Top Gun fucking rocked.
I want to share this with you here. This is I grew up in San Diego.
Okay.
And this is at the Miramar Air Show.
Oh, awesome.
Where Top Gun is set up.
Hell yeah. So you're even closer to the Top Gun lore than I am, but
maybe too close.
I just have memories of so my dad plays music. Music was something that was integrated into my life at an early age. And whether it was, listening to Graceland by Paul Simon on a long car trip, or, hearing my dad's band practice through the basement, maybe for other kids, stuff like that, of course, is super not normal to have your dad's band jamming in the basement while you're trying to go to sleep, or whatever. But it was very normal for me, and it was very intoxicating and, inspiring, and, what kid doesn't want to be like their dad, at that age too. So I was very drawn into not only listening to music, but wanting to learn how to play it, I think eventually. But, I was a kid of the radio, MTV, and there was just something about the hard rockin' guitars and yet the sort of raspy, but very palpable voice of Kenny Loggins singing Danger Zone.
Did that come after Footloose?
I think it's after Footloose, which I also loved. I loved Kenny Loggins as a kid, apparently, because
I think everybody did.
Yeah, 2 huge songs and 2 huge movies that defined the era. And I wouldn't say that the Danger Zone was the inspiration to want to pick up a guitar or anything like that, but certainly before I could play, I spent time goofing around, and I would go in the basement where my dad's studio was, where his bands would practice and he would record stuff, and I would pick up his guitar and pantomime along to whatever, Danger Zone, or I don't know, I feel like Moni Moni, the updated version of Moni Moni, which was
Billy
Idol's
Yeah.
Moni Moni. I would have these little cassettes that I would record off the radio or whatever, and that's how I would entertain myself as a kid, and so eventually, you have these illusions of, you're doing it in front of people, and you're pretending that there's a crowd and all that stuff, and I fantasized about those things as a young kid, and even would draw pictures of my band and stuff that I didn't have, and so even before I could
you're
play,
manifesting before manifesting was a thing.
So even before I could play, I was already thinking about what it would be like to be in a band.
Oh, cool. So when you came down to the basement, were the instruments off limits and you had to sneak in, or
No.
your father was just like, yeah, go ahead?
Yeah, I
And
mean,
it was overjoyed that you were interested.
there was never like a don't touch that, you're going to break it thing, like to the point where I would, plug things into amplifiers sometimes, again, before I could play. And I would just, turn the volume up and, hit the strings and just like hear the noise and feel the like physical connection between, instrument and person. And so, yeah, even before I like could form a chord, I was, I was, becoming familiar with holding a guitar that was probably twice my size at the time.
Yeah.
I remember in third grade, I was in the talent show with my friends and we did Surfin' USA. And again, this is before I could actually play an instrument, but we like took the trucks off of all of our skateboards to make them into surfboards, of course. And we had like 4 or 5 of us with my dad's guitars loaned to us, pantomiming Surfin' USA, like surfing, pretending to surf on these skateboard decks, and like, I think that was probably one of the first times that I felt like the rush of like, oh, I'm doing this thing. And like, even though we're pretending, like, the kids were like cheering for us and screaming, and it was, it was cool, and I had a couple other experiences like that as a kid where like I was like in a play where it was called The Littlest Christmas Tree, and I was the littlest Christmas tree, and I had to sing, a solo, and you get the reaction from the crowd, and even as a little kid, that was something that excited me, and I felt like, wow, I want to keep feeling that feeling, so.
Yeah. And when you were talking about how you plugged an instrument in, even if you didn't, know any chords or anything yet, you could feel that connection.
Yeah.
And for me, it's always like today I went to the basement. I was inspired to plug in and play a little louder today. So that was nice.
Yeah.
And I remembered that feeling of feeling like the sound waves go through your body, basically the vibrations. And it's kind of, you can't really, I guess, explain it. It's different.
I had a very similar, relationship with it. Again, like pre-learning any chords, I already knew what it felt like to turn the volume up on a guitar and hit the strings and know that noise could come out. And of course, you're like putting your fingers on the strings in some shape that you're like making up in the moment, which I also think is like such a important part of just like growing up and finding your passion. And it's like, like being unafraid to try things. And in fact, like, I feel like, I don't like really think of myself as like a great guitar player, but I'm good at what I can do. And one of those things is like, sort of trying to like make up chord shapes and things like that, which I feel like I started doing before I even started to play, and like back to your question, like it was never like an off limits thing. When I got a little bit older and finally wanted to play, I would have my dad help me like learn songs on guitar and teach me, chords. And, he helped me kind of like understand how to like listen to what you're trying to learn and pick out. Like I never was like a tab kid, or like a music, like I had some tab books and like I just never took to them. I could never really truly understand how it worked.
Same here.
So I just learned how to play stuff by ear. And, he taught me how to do that. And, even to the point where I would like jam with my dad's bands sometimes, as like a middle school, high school kid, so, it was very like, it was like playground for me for sure.
Yeah.
For my brother and for myself.
It was like
honestly.
a basement Disneyland.
Yeah, it was awesome. And, between like being able to kind of like, come downstairs and watch my dad's bands practice, whether I was like in the room or like peering through a window, every once in a great while. I mean, they played bars and stuff, so I never really got to see them on a regular basis, but here and there, they would do some things and I was able to see that. And then just, like I said, having access to the instruments, to the space it was a safe space to make noise, and, I don't think my life would not be the same without it. So
yeah, basements are amazing.
it's where creativity, can happen in a way where you're not, at least for me, fearing embarrassment. You're just
True,
kind of
yeah.
like,
You're subterranean.
yeah, I'm down, I'm underground. Like, I mean, people can absolutely hear the bands when they're practicing at my house.
Yeah,
Outside, but yeah, there's just something cool about like kind of going into this like bubble and just like exploring,
Yeah, that was a
exploring
catchy
things.
tune, The Bubble.
Oh,
I like
yes,
that one.
Back to the Bubble.
Yeah.
Shout out me.
Yeah. So that first guitar, just out of curiosity, what kind of guitar was it? That you strummed for the first time?
Yeah. So my dad had an Ovation. It was like a black Ovation acoustic guitar that had a pickup in it.
Like those bowl-back ones?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. It's got the big whale back kind of thing on it. Plastic or whatever that is. Fiberglass, I don't know. But weird guitar. Those guitars are strange.
Yeah.
He actually had a couple Ovations. One he gave to me. And then the one he sort of played, like when they played live, he actually played acoustic plugged in with some effects on it and stuff, and that was just kind of like a vibe of the times, I suppose.
Yeah.
But he also had, I think it was like a PV like Strat copy that maybe wasn't his. Like there was a good portion of time where I feel like my dad did not play electric guitar at all.
Uh-huh.
He would play acoustic plugged in, but he wouldn't play electric until he got like a Tele, like I don't even know what year it is or whatever. It's like one of those like yellowish kind of blonde,
like the Bruce
classic,
Springsteen,
like Tom
Boss.
Petty,
Yeah.
Bruce Springsteen, Teles. But and I should say I'm like not really a gear person, so like sometimes I'm like I don't know what that's called. Like I don't, but yeah. So the guitar that I would plug in and like turn up would have been that kind of, like I said, I think it was like a PV Strat copy, had like a black pick guard from what I can recall, like wood finish, like lighter wood.
Kind of like the 80s
yeah,
era,
totally.
70s, 80s, where everything was, the wood finish was big and
Yep.
usually the black pick guard.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It was right there, and so, and I should say like he did play in a cover band when I was really little called the Voyager Band. And they did, like Van Halen, and they did Billy Idol, and they did, it was like White Wedding and whatever.
Yeah.
So he did play electric guitar, I believe then, but then he kind of got more into singer-songwriter stuff.
Yeah.
Which was what he was into, as a kid. He was like or I guess in college, I should say, like really into James Taylor and that kind of stuff. So like, he kind of gravitated back towards playing like an acoustic kind of setup. But yeah, very fortunate to have access to all that stuff as a kid, for sure.
Cool. So what was your first guitar? I guess I know your father gave you a guitar, an Ovation, but what was the first one that you were like, I want that one, and you got it, whether you bought it or someone bought it for you?
I had like a red kind of like, it was a Samick.
Yep.
Which I think made like keyboards or pianos too, I want to say, but it had like the kind of like more angular like headstock on it, which would have been popular in the 80s. And that was kind of like my first electric guitar, but then I bought a Fender not a Strat, but whatever the cheap Strats are called. I forget. Squire.
Yeah.
I got a Fender Squire that I bought from a guy who owned the comic book and baseball card shop that was like down the street from my house, who also played guitar. His name was Steve. And he sold me that guitar pretty cheap. I immediately put stickers all over it, of course, because, Green Day was popular at the time, and Billy Joe had stickers all over his guitar. So, of course, I had to put any sticker I could find. I worked at a grocery store, and we would steal the like meat packaging stickers. Like we thought they were cool looking. And so I had like meat packaging stickers all over this guitar amongst other stickers. There was a friend of mine that I think he covered his entire guitar with just like meat stickers,
Like the USDA certified
exactly.
stuff.
Yeah. So that that Fender Squire was kind of like the first guitar where I was like, okay, like, Billy Joel plays one, Kurt Cobain plays one, like this is like a real guitar. And that was, that's the guitar I wrote a lot of my like first songs on, and probably played, I would say, my first shows with. And, Strat was like weird because like as cool as they were in terms of like your heroes were playing them, I never really loved the sound of a Stratocaster. So, I always kind of was like, I wish I had something else,
It's funny you say that because I feel the same exact way. I bought a Stratocaster. I was like, I bought my first Strat, and then it's just like,
Yeah.
I just never gelled with it ever.
Yeah. I mean,
And I got another one. It was just like, I have like this, 90s Squire, like Korean made one that I kind of like modified it and everything, which I never play it though.
Yeah.
I just don't like the way it sounds.
Yeah. I think now I'm more like, I'm a huge fan of a band called Big Star, and Big Star's guitar sound is awesome. And it's a Strat, and it's like really trebly and like reverbed out and stuff. But it's like, it sounds great in the way that Alex Chilton, the singer and guitar player who's not alive anymore, of Big Star played, but then there's like the Hendrix and like, I don't know, you see like fucking, can I swear on this podcast?
Sure.
I have twice now, so I'll try not to.
It won't be beeped. It's life.
All right.
We all do
FCC, don't come after me. But you see like Mike and the Mechanics videos or something.
Yeah,
they just like, of course, someone's got a Strat and they don't look cool, know. But now I don't care. I think guitars are, beautiful instruments and all serve different purposes and have different. Like I don't have a million guitars, but I have enough to where like if I want to do a certain thing, like I have something I know I can go to and use it, and so I'm less like concerned about the cool factor maybe,
Right.
But back then I would say when I first got that guitar, I was psyched. I was psyched to have the same kind of guitar like Billy Joel played.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So you mentioned writing your first song on that guitar. So what was the title of that first song?
Oh man.
We'll start there and we'll kind of go if you remember.
I don't remember. I feel like so I like 91, 92, 93 was like the, grunge, kind of became mainstream music, at the time.
Yeah.
And
I keep,
like
I keep forgetting that was so long ago.
I know.
Like I've
don't remind me actually.
Yeah.
But like that kind of stuff, like some of that stuff, I would say specifically Nirvana, it was like you could, as a 12, 13-year-old trying to figure out how to play guitar, you could play those songs. Same with Green Day. If you like a year or so later, like you could figure out, like I could figure out how to play Green Day songs. So a lot of my early songs were just emulating that kind of thing, and I don't remember the name of the first song. I do remember, and I don't know if this was one of my first songs that I wrote, but definitely one of the earliest songs. I was probably a freshman in high school by this point. I was a freshman in high school. So this certainly wouldn't have been like one of my first songs, but it was probably one of the first songs that I wrote that I was like, I think this is actually kind of good, and like I'd learned how to play octave chords at that time. So I wrote a song, which, this could be like too inside baseball for people who don't give a shit about guitars or music in general. But the octave chord is kind of this like, where you put your so there's 6 strings on a guitar, and you put your fingers on the strings in such a way that the kind of like main notes of what you're playing are the same. So one is a lower and one is a higher. And if you play it, in certain like placements on the neck of the guitar, it sounds like this. I don't know. At the time, I thought it was like so unique because up until that point, I was like playing regular chords and then like learning bar chords. But this was like the third type of guitar chord or move or whatever that I learned. So I wrote a song with like a lot of these like octave chords in it. I was like, this is cool. Like this is like, different than like just these like cowboy chord kind of songs
Yeah.
that I was probably playing beforehand, writing beforehand. And when I played it at a talent show, like I played my own song with a band in front of my whole school, and people liked it, and like to the point where like other, cause you like, I don't know if you ever did like talent shows and stuff in school, but like you rehearse, like you do a show run through, like you do it enough times where like the other people around see what you're doing multiple times. So like some of the kids would be like singing the song that we were like rehearsing basically, and like I was like, oh, like that's cool. Like I think that means that they like this, so yeah, one of my like most proudest earliest memories, like trying to figure out how to do music stuff, was playing my own song with a band in ninth grade in front of my whole school, and getting like a cool reaction to it. So
nice.
Yeah.
So you mentioned talent shows. Well, I didn't take part in any. Well, actually, no, I did a couple, but one we did like a battle of the air bands kind of thing.
Okay,
And
cool.
I guess it's a nod to Detroit. Is we did Rock and Roll All Night by
Okay.
Kiss.
Yep.
So I didn't play at the time. None of us played instruments. So we borrowed some instruments,
Okay.
borrowed a drum kit.
Yeah.
We had everything. Did the full makeup.
Sweet.
Wigs. Like pretty much shirtless.
Yeah.
Wearing tights like with studs down the sides.
you
And
went there.
boots. We went all out for
Nice.
it. We even made like this big cardboard sign behind the drums
dude.
that we had one of our friends like plug and unplug
That's so
in the back
cool.
so it blank.
I love that because I feel like that's what you're supposed to do as
Yeah.
a kid. You're supposed I feel like now kids are so worried about like someone recording them all the time, and they don't want to like put themselves out there because they don't want to embarrass themselves. And
This was super embarrassing.
I'm sure, to an extent,
but if I went back to like my high school reunion, they would be like, "Oh my God, you're the ones that did the Kiss show." And, and we had a fog machine too, and we didn't know how to use it, so we almost fell off the stage.
I love
and stuff,
that.
so.
I love that. And I think, like it takes courage to do those things. And, I think I recognized that kind of early, that like, oh, this is like, cause I was I did the talent shows in high school. I was in choir and I was in theater. So I did all of those things, and I was, putting myself out there in front of people. And I think I identified pretty early, like, oh, this is like something that not everybody wants to do, because of, fear of embarrassing themselves or being seen as like not as good as they might think they are in their own head, or whatever the reasons would be to not do it, or just not being interested in it or whatever. But, I think I identified that like, oh, this is something that kind of like makes me different and gives me like an identity. And, I felt, I don't know, like that it was something that I felt very passionate about when I was already like in like 9th, 10th grade. And I got a lot of like, pats on the back for, and it was cool to like have people sort of recognize that you were like putting yourself out there in that way. So, yeah.
I mean, that's really cool. It is a big confidence builder too.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
It was. I mean, I got, bullied and made fun of a ton, and, like called every name you could think of and whatever. But, at the same time, like, I think people kind of there would be like a line that they wouldn't cross because they knew that like deep down, like what I was doing was cool, even though it wasn't like always seen as cool. Like,
a lot of it was
surface.
out of some level of jealousy and
maybe, yeah.
just
I mean,
that you're doing something that they wish they could do.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, and probably vice versa, because I tried out for the basketball team in 9th grade and didn't make it, and secretively like was very upset that I didn't and wanted to play. By sort of the end of the experience, I didn't really want to do it at the beginning of the experience because I was like, I'm too punk for basketball. But my dad was like, I really think you should try out, because I played like basically from like 3rd grade to 8th grade. So I played, basketball like competitively, like organized basketball, for a good number of years. And, like 8th, 9th grade kind of rolls around, you hear, Nirvana, the Breeders, and, cool music, and you're like, oh, like that's more me than the sports thing. So, but I still was like, it would have been cool to play basketball on
Yeah.
the high school basketball team. But now my son does, so I get to live vicariously through him.
Perfect. Exactly. All right. So your first band, Remington. Is it Remington or the Remington?
It can be both.
I think I saw it in two different ways.
Yeah.
So I guess first of all, how did you come up with that name?
So I had like all these kind of different bands that pretty much were the same people, but just we would like change our name and change our sound kind of thing. So we had a band called the Sugar Tunes kind of first, which is named after a song from a band called Sloan that I was like really into in high school and still love and whatever. So we like stole our band name from a band's song title, which is not totally an abnormal thing.
Yeah.
Like Radiohead is a Talking Head song, but, and then, so that was kind of like a dorky, like Weezer-y, alternative rock band. And then we all started to get into I guess like it would have been like the second wave of emo. So like there were bands like Sunny Day Real Estate, Texas Is the Reason, and all these bands played in these like different tunings, like Drop D, which is again, maybe too in the
Grunge.
weeds kind of like guitar talk, but like, it's just got like a more like thicker kind of like, more kind of like heavy sound. So I
always think Soundgarden when I think
yeah,
D.
totally. But we were getting into like more heavy, like aggressive music, and the Sugar Tunes was not going to cut it, So our guitar player, Marty, I mean, this is all while I'm in high school, maybe like a sophomore in high school or something like that, was like, we need a different name. And I don't remember what the other possible choices were, but for some reason he was like, Remington. We're like, okay, like the gun? Or like, I think at the time that there was a show called Remington Steel.
Yeah.
Starring Pierce Brosnan, which was maybe on TV still. I don't remember exactly. But then there was another band called Remington that we found out about later, but they spelled it differently. But we were like, let's just add the in front of it. And so we became the Remington. I never felt any connection with the name. But, at that point, like, I mean, you listen to podcast after podcast or see interview after interview with like people in bands who are like successful. And 99.9% of the time when someone's like, who's your first band? The name of that band is absolutely terrible because when you're that age, you're an idiot and you don't know anything. And you just think things are funny that aren't maybe that funny. But anyway, so that was kind of how we landed on that. And, yeah, like I said, we were like trying to do like a emo core, like, I don't know, like I was so into this band, Sunny Day Real Estate. I just absolutely loved them. And so that's kind of what I was like trying to emulate. So, but it was, kind of like the first real, it's like my first real band.
Yeah. I mean, I listened to like one of the albums kind of in the background while I was working, and I mean, it sounds good. Like,
yeah, it's all right.
It's not like, it sounds better than, some adult bands that are,
it might,
that I've heard.
I mean, our drummer was really good. Rob Bird is his name. Shout out Rob Bird. And then my childhood friend, Adam, played bass and basically like learned how to play bass to be in the band, and now is like a super awesome musician. Doesn't play much anymore, but still can totally like such a great bass player. And then Marty, who I mentioned earlier, he lived down the street from me, and he was a little bit older than me too. Our drummer was a little bit older than me, so a couple guys who were older and had played in some bands and had done some things.
Yeah.
And then we kind of found each other and formed this different kind of versions of the same band essentially. But, I think having like Marty and Rob, who are a little bit older and had done a few things musically, up until that point, helped us kind of like get better, so maybe if it was like me and two other people who had never been in a band prior to, that experience, like maybe it wouldn't have been as kind of put together as it sort of ended up being. But I give those guys a lot of credit for sort of like teaching us how to do it.
Yeah. Bringing the experience. And,
yeah.
All right. So let's move on to, I guess, your post high school.
Okay.
You went to college. And I guess, is the next band Red Shirt Brigade?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So I went to Central Michigan University, and it's a couple hours away from Livonia, where I grew up. And at the time, it was not like a super like diverse school. In terms of just like, well, in terms of like race um, and other factors. But one of the things that was not super diverse about it was like I struggled to find other people that I thought were kind of into the same stuff as me. But it ended up kind of being a good thing because basically anybody who was like into like weird, cool music, I was friends with them.
Yeah.
And there was probably about 8 of us, But one of those people was this guy named Trevor Nod, and Trevor and I met freshman year. I actually remember going up to like orientation a couple like weeks before school started, and like walking around campus and seeing this guy sitting on a bench with his parents wearing like a band t-shirt of a band that I had, like a really like obscure band that I was like, whoa, I can't believe he's wearing, this kid that I just walked by is wearing this band's shirt. And so I ended up seeing him, or somebody like I think introduced us within the first month or so of college. And, it was kind of like, oh, like, do you like this band? Do you like that band? Yes, yes. No. Have you heard this? No, I haven't heard this. Like we were just like fast friends and sharing music with each other. And I remember the first time he came over to my dorm, I put on a Modest Mouse album, who were not popular at the time. Like I put it on, I started like jumping around for some reason, like moshing it by myself. This is like a weird thing for me to do. I don't know why I did this. But pretty much after that, he's like, okay, we're going to be friends now. And he's like super, like even back then, like he was like very already like figuring out how to like do his own thing. And I was very like impressed by it. He had like learned how to play in these like alternate tunings and like just had like this cool like style. And I would hear him like play these like little jams and just like mess around with riffs on his guitar. And I was like, dude, we should form a band, like I'll play drums. And up until that point, like I played drums, but I don't think I'd ever played like in a band. So I was actually the drummer in Red Shirt Brigade. And then his friend Paul, it was a couple of years older than us, that he grew up with, that went to Central too, that they were in a band together, like kind of back home. We were like, got him to play bass. And, so we did that for a little while. It's just like the 3 of us. And then my brother joined the band on keyboard. And then Paul eventually left, and we got this guy, Dan, to play. And we did a lot of cool stuff, like we had the music was like, I feel like totally ahead of its time. And I can say that because I wasn't writing the songs,
Yeah.
Like the other guys, Dan and Trevor were just so talented, And my brother and I certainly like were contributing, in a not a passive way. Like we were involved in the, arrangements of the songs and stuff. We all sang, we all had ideas. We had, we would practice actually at my parents' house in Livonia, but we all went, except for my brother who's younger and was still in high school at the time. We would drive the 2.5 hours from Mount Pleasant to my mom and dad's house to practice in the basement. And my dad had like weird keyboards and like drum machines and stuff. So we would start to like pull that stuff out and experiment with it. And, like he had this old weird drum machine with all these like pre-programmed beats that like he would use, that we like were like, I don't know, just hit a button, see what happens. And then we would like write a song around it, So we were like really into like experimenting, and it was so fun. It was such a fun band to play in.
So did you play drums before that band?
Yeah. I mean, I sort of like, just because my dad's band would practice in the basement. And when I was a little younger, my dad had a band with just him and another guy. It was a 2-piece, and they had a drum machine. And they would play covers, they would play some originals, but it was just bass and guitar and a drum machine. It was like as economic as you could possibly get. And it was really smart what they did, because instead of having a full band, they would play, like bars and stuff for 4 hours. They would split the take 50-50
Yeah.
instead of, a quarter or a fifth, for each person. So they ended up like being able to, supplement income and things when like times got tough as a kid. Like they were able to like keep putting food on the table because they were really smart about their approach to playing live gigs, just having 2 people. But then, they were like, let's get a drummer eventually. And so at some point a drum set showed up in my basement, and, I would kind of mosey over, and actually Rob, who was the drummer in Remington, I would watch him a lot, and just kind of like study what he was doing and then try to sit down and like emulate what he was doing. And eventually I would say around 15, I was like, oh, I think I can kind of play these, but I'd never done it in a band before. Like I'd played like, we would like mess around with like covers and stuff. But, so yeah, Red Shirt Brigade was like the first band I ever played drums in. I played drums in a handful of bands over the years, but, it was cool because like, I felt like I was kind of like, from the drummer's perspective, it's you kind of get to like play the role of like conductor sometimes. I feel like, like you're setting the pace, you're contributing to the dynamics of things. And that was really cool to like kind of learn how to make songs and music on an instrument that A, wasn't my like primary instrument, and B, was like something I was kind of learning how to play as we went, and like listening to other drummers and trying to like do what they did and failing at it until I finally could get it. And like, I'm really proud of that band and that record that we made. And like, I think those songs are really cool. And I listen to it sometimes. I'm just like, how did we come up with this? Cause it's not the kind of music that when you picture like 18, 19-year-olds playing in a band.
Yeah.
It's not the kind of music you picture. Like we were like listening to like Yes and King Crimson and like weird, like jazzy kind of like experimental music that was coming out of Chicago at the time. Like a band like, there's this band called Tortoise that we loved, and a band called Sea and Cake that we loved. And so like we were like, while I was still listening to like punk music and whatever, I was also getting to this other stuff. And that really pushed us into these like weird directions that like, if we weren't listening to like Chord of the Crimson King or like the Fragile by Yes, like a lot, it wasn't like we listened to it once. Like we were like obsessed with it. Like 2112 by Rush. We were like, this record's awesome, but coming at it, not from like a Dungeons and Dragons, like medieval person way. It was more just like, this is like really cool, weird, complicated music, you know? And I tend to gravitate towards more like, straightforward melodies and like straightforward song structures, as a songwriter myself. But yeah, like it was just an exciting time of like discovery and trying to then take the things that we were finding out about and discovering and like inject it into our music. You know?
So the one thing you did have, I saw that you did open for a band that ended up having great success. Yeah. Which was
Death Cab for Cutie. Yeah.
Yeah. How was that? But was that before they really hit it big?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah. So Red Shirt Brigade, this would have been probably like 98, 99, 2000, like that kind of those years. And, once like the lineup was solidified, we really tried to like do it, like we didn't go on these like 3-month-long tours or anything because we were in college and stuff. But like we, we're starting to play out of town. We're starting to get on shows with like bigger bands. And I had discovered Death Cab on their very first album called Something About Airplanes. And I was obsessed with it. I loved this record. And then they came out with their second album is called We Have the Facts and We're Voting Yes. And I loved that record. And Red Shirt Brigade was a band at the time. And I saw, like, this would have been like early internet, like not like definitely pre-social media, but like, just like you were starting to find out about things online,
Yeah.
And I saw that Death Cab was playing at this club in Ann Arbor, and I was like, I really want to get Red Shirt Brigade on the show. You know, I called the club and they were like, actually, the show's canceled. Like, we can't. Like, I don't remember exactly why. And I was like, well, that's bullshit. You know, I was like, I need to save this show because I really want to see this band. So at the time, we had friends who were in Ann Arbor. They, you know, were students at U of M, and they had shows in their basement. So I called them. I think we had played there maybe one time, you know, prior. It was called the Lunchbox. It was a pretty large basement. It was like, I mean, obviously people can't see this, but it was like you could fit like 100 people down in the basement, and it was like, it wasn't uncomfortable, you know? So I don't know how they, you know, managed to do this, I guess. But like, so I found the phone number of the booking agent, of Death Cab's booking agent somehow. And I called him on the phone. I was like, hey, my name's Ryan. I play in this band. I saw Death Cab's coming and the show got canceled. He's like, oh yeah, we're trying to find somewhere else to do it, but I don't think there's enough time. I was like, I promise you I can figure out how to get this show somewhere else. So I called these guys and I was like, hey, Death Cab for Cutie. And I think they maybe knew who the band was. Anyway, I saved the show. Okay. The show gets moved to this house. I was like, you know, I told the booking agent, I was like, I got the show, like all this, I figured it out. The only caveat is that my band has to open the show. He's like, that's fine, whatever. So it was like us, Death Cab, and maybe one or two other bands. Like I think the guys who lived at the house had a band, and their band played. And yeah, so we played the show with Death Cab for Cutie in a basement in Ann Arbor before, you know, anybody really knew about them. I mean, there was a good crowd there of like indie weird kids who were like into underground music. But, you know, I mean, the last time I saw Death Cab for Cutie was playing at the Fox Theater. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So like,
right.
That's a huge jump from a basement in Ann Arbor. And so their guitar player, Chris, was also starting to record albums. He recorded some of the early Death Cab records, and he ended up doing some records by Tegan and Sarah and the Decemberists and a lot of bands. And but at the time he was just starting to do this. And so he was like, you guys are really great. Would you ever consider coming out to Seattle, which is where they lived, and recording a record? And we were like 21 at the time. We're like, sure, why not? So we did.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So by you making the show happen, it created a lot of other good things that happened.
I mean, I know it sounds kind of like I and I'm probably forgetting some of the details, and I'm sure there was other people who like helped put it all together,
Right,
but
yeah.
I was kind of the one that was like, no, like this show has to happen, and I have to figure out a way for it to happen, and I have to figure out a way for my band to play, because I was just so into them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really like that. I would say that moment playing with them, having Chris kind of like invite us out to make this record, which we did do. You know, we drove in Dan, our bass player's parents' conversion van.
Oh, wow.
We played some shows on the way there. We ended up staying in Seattle for like 10 days. The studio we recorded at was where Nirvana recorded Bleach, and a bunch of other like big like early 90s records were made. And it was just like an amazing experience, you know. Like we just
Sounds like
couldn't believe we were doing it, you know. And we were farther away from home than I'd ever been, you know. And it was just a surreal kind of thing, you know. And we, it like really opened the door to like, oh wow, you like if you just meet people and you're, you know, able to talk to them and connect with them, and you know, if you practice and you work on your music, like things can happen, you know.
Yeah.
And it was like the first moment where I felt like that, like the possibilities kind of opened up. And you know, I still to this day, you know, I still feel like, even though I'm much older now, I still kind of like feel like anything's possible when it comes to this kind of thing, you know. So I hold on to that, like if you're just nice to people, you try to make connections through this thing that you're passionate about and that these other people you're around are passionate about. And you just, you know, are willing to like fail at it, you
Yep.
know, because we didn't know our van could have broke down. You know, we could have gotten lost 1,000 times, and we did. You know, we could have made a bad record. Like all these things could have happened, and it didn't deter us from wanting to try. You know, and
Right.
I still hold on to that like feeling, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, like, just even if you just think about it, if when you called that venue and asked about that show, and they said, well, it's canceled, and if you just hung up, like,
Yeah.
none of that, whether all the good things and the bad
Totally.
things, never would have happened.
Yeah, and I feel like persistence and like, you know, not taking no for an answer. I've had to deploy those concepts a lot over my time playing music. And sometimes I feel weird about it. Other times I feel like it's necessary. And I sometimes like look back and go like, oh, I was a little too like pushy there or whatever. But I always kind of believed in what I was doing, you know, no matter if it was playing drums in Red Shirt Brigade or writing, you know, songs for what I do now. Like I believe in it still, you know, and I feel like if I believe in it, other people could too. And I've never lost that belief, you know,
Yeah.
whether it's true or not, I don't actually care.
No, I mean, that's
But,
good. Yeah.
I've never let go of that belief. And when you get some yeses, you know, it's like, okay, you know, like I'm going to throw out a lot of, you know, like I mean, anybody who knows me will tell you like, I've always been this person who's like asking to play shows with X, Y, and Z cool band.
Yeah.
I've always done this. And, you know, you get a lot of rejection from that, you know, not even just like, it's not like you suck rejection. It's just like, oh, we got somebody else, or they're not having a local, or whatever the reason might be. And if you let the rejection deter you, you're going to miss out on the moment when someone will eventually say yes.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's kind of been my MO.
Yeah,
you know?
it's interesting that you mentioned that, because the last show we did, we interviewed the owners of Coffee and Bark.
Yeah.
And, you know, they kind of, somebody, I can't remember what, but some local online, you know, paper or whatever you would call it, wrote an article about them, and they kind of talked about the power of yes. Like if you don't put yourself out there to ask, you'll never get a yes. You won't get a no, but you won't get a yes either.
Yeah.
So you just never
and it's
really know.
intimidating, right? Like, I mean, I feel like, again, like young people maybe feel like they don't want to put themselves out there, you know, because they don't want to embarrass themselves or whatever. And I'm self-conscious for sure. Like, you know, I'm not like the kind of like, I'm not an extrovert actually. I'm a pretty like tried and true introvert, even though I'm very talkative, you know, when I do these types of things. But for the most part, I'm a pretty introverted person. But again, it goes back to like the belief in what you're doing. And if you believe it, eventually it's, you know, and it's not just the belief, of course, like you got to practice, you got to like hone your skills and stuff. But you know, having that belief and that like willingness to hear a no and not let that like derail me has always been something that I've like tried to stick to. You know?
Yeah. Cool. That's definitely something you need in this industry, I'm sure. That
you need it in life,
persistence.
man.
Yeah.
You know, like
Good
anything,
point.
you know, it doesn't matter what it is. It's
Yeah.
like, you know, not to get like super serious or political, but we're living in a time where people in power want to hold us down.
Yeah.
They don't want us to get to those yeses. It's like, you know what I mean? And like, I feel fortunate, you know, in some ways, and privileged to be like have a job and like, you know, be able to pay my mortgage currently, which is getting harder and harder. But there's other people who, you know, the door is just constantly being slammed in their faces.
Yeah.
You know, so I would say, you know, having like a commitment to perseverance is something that I hold to be very important to me. And it's I think without it, you know, man, I don't know how you get anything done or you know, so.
Yeah, I mean, I was stuck in like hardcore corporate America for a long time.
Yeah.
And at one point I just couldn't keep going. And, having like young kids and everything, it's like, it's like you're kind of stuck in this, okay, what are my options?
Yeah.
And, I ended up just, getting a master's degree and got somehow really lucked into the job I'm in right now.
Cool.
And it's generally same industry, but it's not that hardcore corporate feel
Right.
that I was in before. Because that was just really like kind of oppressive and mind numbing.
Sure.
It's just
Yeah.
kind of like, what you explained, just that whole feeling of, okay, you're stuck in your job. We want to keep you stuck in your job and make you feel that way. And
Yeah, dude.
that was rough, man.
But I feel like, the like I said earlier, I was in theater in high school, and you try out for these roles, and we did Little Shop of Horrors one year, and I really wanted to be Seymour. So if you're familiar with Little Shop of Horrors, Seymour is like the Rick Moranis character from the movie. He's a little guy with glasses, and I'm like, I was born to play this role. And I didn't get it. I was convinced I was going to get it. Everybody told me I was going to get it. And then the day they announced the cast, I was the shop owner, Mr. Mushnick.
Oh.
And my best friend ended up getting the role of Seymour. And I was very upset about this. I refused to accept the role for an entire day. Like, my theater teacher, who's now passed away and was very close to me, I was very close to, and she was a really inspiring person in my life. Her name's Angie Hillman. But I gave them some stress because I was just like, this is wrong. I should be this other guy.
Yeah.
But they were testing me, and I think the test was, you're not always gonna get what you think you're supposed to get. You're not always, just because you think you deserve something or you think you're right for something, doesn't always mean that other people who have the ability to make that decision ultimately are going to agree with you.
Yeah.
But it also shouldn't make you stop. And I remember being very much like on the edge of like, do I even want to do this? And then I talked to them, and I talked to some of my friends. I was like, yeah, I'm going to accept the role. And that was like a very early lesson in my life where I was just like, you can't rely on just your own desire to get what you want to be the thing that's going to get you what you want. And you're going to hear no's, and you're going to hear yes, buts, and you're going to hear all these other things that, could very easily make you want to stop or quit or deter you or whatever. And I feel like that moment I was just like, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take this other role. I'm going to kill it, and I'm going to try to enjoy it. And it was awesome, and so I feel like, a moment like that in your life is kind of something you can continue to apply as you go.
Right. Cool. So after Red Shirt Brigade, there was a couple other bands you were in. Maybe look for a shorter time, like Tiny Steps and One Trip, One Noise.
Yeah, One Trip, One Noise became Thunderbirds Are Now. So
yeah, that was the next section I was going to lead into.
Yeah.
Anything memorable from either of those two bands?
Tiny Steps was super fun. I was a drummer in that band too. I was dating the bass player Courtney, and we had a lot of fun in that band. It was like a very 90s kind of power pop kind of style band. A guy named Eric Weir was the singer, and we played a lot of good shows. And I had a lot of fun, and it's kind of, I ended up leaving the band, and they got somebody else to play drums. So I didn't ruin the band. They kept going after. I was just in too many bands at the time. So, but then One Trip, One Noise, which turned into Thunderbirds Are Now, was me. Well, they were a band before I joined the band. Somebody left the band. Marty, who is the guitar player in my first real band, Remington, called me up one day. He's like, hey, do you want to play with us? And I hadn't played guitar in a band in a minute. So I was like, sure, I'll try it. And we ended up, playing maybe once or twice as that version of the band where I kind of learned the songs that they were working on at the time. And then I was like, I think I want to write some songs, And so, and I was getting really into post-punk music from the 70s. So bands like Gang of Four, Wire, There was like a big, like, this would have been, I guess, like early 2000s, 2001, like New York, like the Strokes and all that stuff was kind of like happening. And there were some bands that were like doing this kind of like punky, funky, like, I was almost going to say like Red Hot Chili Peppers, but good. But like, just like the like danceable punk music was kind of like a thing. And I was getting really into that. And so I was starting to write songs like that. And that's kind of how Thunderbirds eventually began.
Stay tuned for part 2, where we're going to talk about some more amazing bands and experiences with Thunderbirds Are Now and Ryan's current bands.